Is this a twist of fate or a lesson life is trying to teach me? How should I react? I see it as a valuable lesson, accept it with gratitude, and choose to move forward. At 2:14 on a Sunday afternoon, I walked into a church and saw my own face beside a coffin. My photograph stood near the altar, surrounded by white flowers. A black ribbon crossed the corner of the frame. Nearly 80 people sat in the pews, dressed in dark clothes. They had all come to mourn me. My brother Dean stood at the front of the room. His wife, Monica, sat in the first row with a tissue pressed to her eyes. Neither of them looked surprised that there was no body inside the coffin. Dean placed both hands on the podium and lowered his voice. "My sister Rachel was a strong woman," he said, "but even strong people can make terrible mistakes." I stopped just inside the doorway. No one had noticed me yet. Dean continued. "Over the past few days, we discovered problems inside our family business. Money is missing, records were changed, and although it hurts me to say this, Rachel may have been responsible." A few people whispered. My employees were sitting in the third row. Some of them looked confused. Others looked angry. Dean was not only burying me, he was blaming me for a crime. I waited until the room became quiet again. Then I stepped into the center aisle. "If you're going to tell them about my mistakes, Dean," I said, "you should also tell them which ones you made in my name." Every head turned toward me. A woman screamed. Monica dropped her funeral program. Dean stared at me as if he had seen a ghost, but I was not a ghost, I was alive. And 6 days earlier, my brother had looked directly into my eyes and decided the world would be easier if I stayed dead. 6 days earlier, I had been sitting in my office at the Harper house, the hotel and wedding venue my family had owned for more than 30 years. My father built the original building when Dean and I were teenagers. It started with 12 guest rooms and a small dining hall. By the time my parents retired, it had become one of the most successful wedding venues in the county. Dean was the public face of the business. He welcomed important clients, gave speeches, and appeared in local magazines. I handled the money. That was why I noticed the first payment. $48,000 had been sent to a company called M&E Event Solutions. I did not recognize the name. At first, I thought it was a new supplier. Monica managed most of our large events, so I opened the invoice expecting to see charges for flowers, furniture, or catering. Instead, the invoice contained only 3 words: Special Event Services. No dates, no details, no contact name. I searched our records. There was another payment for $62,000, then another for $35,000. By the time I finished checking the previous 18 months, I had found more than $640,000 in payments, all sent to the same company. My hands went cold. I pulled up the approval records. Every payment had been approved with my electronic signature, but I had never seen those invoices before. I printed the documents and locked my office door. Then I searched the company name online. M&E Event Solutions had no website, no reviews, and no business address. It was registered to a mailbox 2 towns away. I called the number listed on the registration. The phone rang once, then went to voicemail. A woman's voice said, "You have reached Monica Evans. Leave a message." Monica Evans was my sister-in-law's maiden name. I sat completely still. For years, Dean had told me that the business was struggling because costs were rising. He had asked me to delay repairs, reduce employee hours, and use my personal savings to cover payroll during slow months. I had believed him. I had trusted him. And all that time, money had been leaving the company through a business connected to his wife. I copied every record onto a flash drive. Then I called an independent auditor named Sarah Collins. My father had worked with her years earlier before Dean convinced him to use a different accounting firm. "I need you to examine some payments," I told her. Quietly. "How serious is it?" she asked. "Possibly more than $600,000. There was a pause. "Does your brother know?" "No." And I need it to stay that way until we understand exactly what happened. Sarah agreed to meet me the next morning. After the call, I placed the flash drive inside my purse and gathered the printed invoices. That was when I heard a small sound outside my office. The floorboard near the door always creaked when someone stepped on it. I opened the door. The hallway was empty, but at the far end, the service door was slowly closing. I walked toward it and looked outside. Dean was crossing the parking lot. He did not turn around. That evening, he called me twice. I did not answer. Then he sent a message. "We need to talk before tomorrow." I stared at the screen. I had not told him about the meeting. I had not told anyone. At that moment, I understood two things. Dean knew I had found the money, and whatever he planned to do next had already begun. I didn't reply to Dean's message. I sat in my office with the lights off and watched the parking lot through the blinds until his car finally pulled out. He was gone, but I still felt his presence in the building, like he left something behind. A threat, a warning. My phone buzzed again and I looked down. Another text. "Rachel, don't do anything stupid. We can fix this together." I almost laughed. Fix what? He didn't even know what I'd found, or maybe he did. Maybe he'd been watching me for weeks. Maybe he'd heard me on the phone with Sarah. Maybe that creaking floorboard wasn't an accident. I shoved my phone into my purse and checked the flash drive again. It was still there, tucked into the inside pocket, right next to the printed invoices. Every single piece of evidence that proved my brother and his wife had been bleeding our company. Dry for 18 months, I couldn't leave any of it in the office. Dean had access to everything. He knew the alarm codes, the computer passwords, the safe combinations. If I left those papers behind, they'd be gone by morning. I grabbed my car keys and walked out, locking my office door behind me even though I knew it wouldn't matter if Dean really wanted to get in. The parking lot was empty. The rain had started, just a light drizzle at first, but I could feel it getting heavier. I drove toward home, taking the coastal road like I always did. It was the fastest route, about 40 minutes from Harper House to my house near the ocean. I'd driven that road 1,000 times. I knew every turn, every curve, every spot where the guardrail was rusted and weak. That night, the rain was coming down so hard I could barely see the white lines on the asphalt. My wipers were going full speed and it still wasn't enough. The wind was pushing my car sideways. I slowed down to 30 miles an hour, maybe less. My phone lit up on the passenger seat. Dean was calling again. I ignored him. Then a text popped up. "Pick up the phone, Rachel." I still didn't answer. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I was trying to focus on the road, trying to ignore the buzzing phone, trying to get home in one piece. Then I saw something in the headlights. A large branch, or maybe a piece of debris from the storm, right in the middle of my lane. I had nowhere to go. The road was narrow, the cliff was on my right, and there was an oncoming car in the other lane. I swerved. The wheels lost traction. The car hit the guardrail, and then I was going over. Everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was in the water. Cold, dark water up to my chest. My car was somewhere behind me, upside down, headlights shining through the murky waves like dying eyes. I didn't know how I got out. I didn't remember opening the door or unbuckling my seatbelt. I just knew I was alive, and I was freezing, and I couldn't feel my left arm. I tried to stand, but the current was pulling me under. My legs wouldn't hold me. I reached for my purse. It wasn't there. Nothing was there. My phone, my wallet, the flash drive, all those printed documents, everything I had that proved. What Dean and Monica had done was gone. I dragged myself toward the shore, my hands bloody from the rocks, my dress torn, my head spinning. I couldn't remember my address. I couldn't remember my own phone number. I tried to think of my name. Rachel, I was Rachel, Rachel something. I had a brother. Dean. He did something with money. I had proof. I couldn't remember the proof. I collapsed on the wet sand and lost consciousness again. A man found me the next morning. He worked for the county, clearing storm debris from the roads. He saw my body near the rocks and thought I was dead. Then I moved, and he called 911. An ambulance took me to a hospital in the next county, about an hour away from where I lived. I couldn't tell them my name. I couldn't tell them anything. They admitted me as Jane Doe. The doctors said I had a severe concussion and some memory loss. They said it was probably temporary, but they couldn't be sure. I spent 2 days in that hospital, unable to tell anyone who I was. Unable to explain that I wasn't just some homeless woman who'd wandered off the road. On the 3rd day, things started coming back. Harper House, that was my family's business. I ran it with my brother. Monica, his wife, the money, $640,000. Dean knew, he knew I'd found it. I told the nurse I needed to contact my family. I gave her the name Harper House. Please call them, I said. My brother runs it. He needs to know I'm here. The nurse smiled and said she'd make the call. I felt relief for the first time in days. Dean would come. He'd take me home. He'd help me remember everything. He came that evening. I was lying in the hospital bed with a bandage wrapped around my head and a sling on my arm. My vision was still blurry. The lights were dim and I could barely make out the figure in the doorway, but I knew his shape. I'd known it my entire life. Dean, he walked toward the bed. He stopped about 3 feet away. He stared at me. I tried to smile. I tried to lift my hand. I tried to say his name, but my voice came out as a whisper. He didn't react. He just kept staring. For a moment, I thought he was in shock. I thought he was processing the fact that his sister was alive. Then he turned around and walked out. I lay there waiting for him to come back. I waited for the doctors. I waited for someone. The nurse came in a few minutes later. She looked uncomfortable. She looked at me with pity. "Your brother was here," she said. "He said he doesn't know you. He said he's never seen you before." I couldn't process the words. They didn't make sense. Of course he knew me. I was his sister. We'd worked together for 30 years. We grew up in the same house. We buried our parents together. "That's not possible," I said. "That was Dean Harper. He's my brother. He knows me." The nurse shook her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am." He was very curt. He said, "You must be confused." I lay there for hours, trying to remember if I was wrong. Maybe my memory was worse than I thought. Maybe I wasn't Rachel Harper. Maybe I was someone else who just happened to know that name. Then I asked for a phone. The nurse brought me a tablet with internet access. I searched Harper House. The homepage had a photo of the building. I knew every window, every flower box, every stone in the walkway. I searched Rachel Harper. There was my name, my photo, my biography. I was listed as co-owner of Harper House. My email address was right there, my phone number, everything. Then I found the local news. Local businesswoman Rachel Harper presumed dead after coastal crash. The article described the accident. My car had been found submerged. My purse was missing. My body hadn't been recovered. The search was called off due to dangerous conditions. The police assumed I died. And then I saw the funeral announcement. Dean had scheduled a memorial service for his sister Rachel. The service was in 2 days. My brother had stood in my hospital room, looked directly into my eyes, walked outside, and told a nurse he'd never seen me before, and then he planned a funeral for me anyway. My own name was on the invitation. My photo was on the website. People were already sending flowers. I felt something break inside me. My brother didn't want me alive. He needed me dead. He needed me to be a body that couldn't speak, a name that couldn't fight back. He wanted the world to believe I was a thief and a coward and a woman who drove herself off a cliff because she couldn't face the truth. But I was not dead, and I was not done. My brother knew I was alive, and in 48 hours, he planned to bury me anyway. I stared at that funeral announcement for what felt like hours. The words didn't change. They just sat there on the tablet, mocking me. Rachel Harper, beloved sister, devoted businesswoman. The ceremony would be at St. Mark's Church. Friends and colleagues were invited to celebrate her life. Donations could be made in her memory. Donations to what? To the family she left behind. To the brother who just denied knowing her, I should have felt grief. My own family was planning my funeral, but I didn't feel grief. I felt cold. My hand stopped shaking. My head cleared. I'd been in that hospital for 3 days while Dean made his move. He didn't know I remembered the money. He didn't know I'd called Sarah Collins. He didn't know I'd printed those invoices. As far as he knew, I was just a confused woman who might never remember who she was. But I was remembering now. Everything was coming back. The $48,000. The $62,000. All those payments to Monica's company. The years of Dean telling me we were struggling while they drained our accounts. They weren't just stealing from the business. They were setting me up to take the fall. I needed help. I needed someone who could get me out of that hospital and make people believe I was who I said I was. I remembered Sarah's number. I dialed. She answered on the second ring. "Hello, Sarah," I said. My voice was weak. "This is Rachel Harper." Silence on the other end. "Rachel? I'm alive," I said. "I'm in a hospital. I need your help." "This isn't funny," she said. "I don't know who you are, but this is a sick joke." "You told me you'd examine some payments," I said. "Over $600,000. I called you from my office. You agreed to meet me the next morning." Another silence, longer. "Rachel?" "Yes." "Oh my God," her voice cracked. "Everyone thinks you're dead. There's a funeral. They found your car. They said you drove off the road on purpose." "I didn't drive off on purpose," I said. "There was something in the road. I swerved. I don't remember everything." "But I'm alive, Sarah. I'm at St. Anne's in the next county, and I need you to come get me." She showed up that same night. I don't know how she pulled it off, but she did. She brought me clothes, simple stuff, a dark jacket and pants. She helped me out of bed and walked me to the elevator. I told the nurse my name. I signed the discharge forms. They couldn't hold me against my will. I was a grown woman, not a threat to myself or anyone else. Sarah drove me to a hotel near the hospital. She booked a room under her name and made sure nobody followed us. I sat on the edge of the bed and told her everything. The payments, Monica's maiden name, the invoices with no details. The signatures I never authorized, Dean's message, the accident, the hospital. "What did Dean say when you called him?" I asked. "I didn't call him," Sarah said. "After you disappeared, I tried to reach you. Your phone went straight to voicemail. Then I heard about the accident. I went to Harper house to ask questions. Dean told me you'd been acting strange lately. He said you were stressed about the finances. He made it sound like you might have taken the money yourself. He blamed me." "He didn't say it directly," Sarah said, "but he didn't have to. He told everyone you were under pressure, that you'd been making mistakes, that you might have done something you regretted." I closed my eyes. I could picture it. Dean standing in the office, shaking his head sadly, Monica nodding along, everyone feeling sorry for them. The grieving brother and his poor wife, who'd lost their sister to her own demons. "My computer," I said. "The files, did anyone access them?" Sarah hesitated. "I tried to get to your office the day after the accident. Dean had already put a lock on the door. He said it was part of an internal investigation. He needed to preserve the evidence." "What evidence?" "He said there were documents showing you'd transferred money to a private account." "That's a lie." "I know," Sarah said, "but nobody else does. He's been running the business for 3 days. He told the staff you were probably dead. He told them to stay calm and keep working. He's already scheduled meetings with the bank." This was the part that made me angriest. Dean wasn't just covering his tracks. He was using my disappearance to take full control. He was telling everyone I was a thief. He was making sure nobody would look too closely at what he'd been doing for 18 months. "Do you still have access to the backup system?" I asked. "The cloud backup for financial records. It runs independent from the office computers." Sarah shook her head. "I don't have the codes." "I do," I said. "I changed them 3 months ago. Dean doesn't know the new ones." Sarah found me a laptop. I logged into the backup system using my personal credentials. The documents were all there. 19 payments to M&E Event Solutions over 18 months. The total was exactly $640,000. I opened the metadata on each file. Every single one showed that the electronic signature was generated from a specific IP address. I checked the IP. It was Monica's home computer. She'd been approving these payments using my identity. I found more documents in the backup system. Drafts of an internal memo Dean was preparing. The memo accused me of financial mismanagement. It said I'd been acting erratically. It recommended my ownership stake be temporarily transferred to Dean while I was unavailable. I scrolled further. There was a draft of a resolution to sell part of the business. The sale was scheduled for the Monday after the funeral. Dean was planning to finalize everything when no one would ask questions. "He's been planning this for weeks," I said. "Maybe longer." "What do you want to do?" Sarah asked. "We need to get these documents to a lawyer, someone who can stop him before he does anything irreversible." "I know a lawyer," Sarah said. "Michael Reed. He handled some contract work for your father years ago. He's retired, but he still takes cases when he thinks they matter. Call him." Michael came the next morning. He was about 60, gray hair, calm voice. He listened while I told him everything. The payments, the signatures, the hospital, Dean, Monica, the funeral. "I need to verify this," he said. "I'm not saying I don't believe you, but I need to see the evidence." I showed him the files. He studied each one carefully. Then he looked at me. "Your brother knew you were alive." "He stood in my hospital room," I said. He looked at me. Then he told the nurse he'd never seen me before. "That's a crime," Michael said. "Abandonment at the very least, possibly fraud." "He knew you were a victim of an accident and he did nothing. That's not something the law ignores." "Can you stop the sale?" I asked. "I can try," he said, "but it's complicated. You're not officially dead, so Dean can't inherit anything. But he can argue you're mentally incompetent. He's been preparing a case. He's been telling people you were unstable. We need to prove he forged your signature and stole from the company for over a year. Once we prove that, everything he says about you becomes suspect." He contacted the bank. He filed a preliminary injunction to freeze any transfer of ownership. Then he contacted the hospital. They still had video footage from the day Dean visited me. The video showed him walking into my room, standing near my bed, and leaving. No sound, but the nurse was willing to give a statement about what he said. "This is enough to slow him down," Michael said, "but it's not enough to stop him completely. He's going to hold the funeral. He's going to give that speech. He's going to try to convince everyone you're gone. If we confront him before that, he can still change his story. He can say he was confused. He can claim he didn't recognize you because you were injured. We need him to say it publicly. We need him to commit to his lie in front of everyone." I sat back in my chair. My brother was going to stand at my funeral and say terrible things about me. He was going to tell everyone I was a thief, and I was going to let him do it. "I'll be there," I said. "I'll walk in when he starts talking. I'll make sure everyone sees the moment he realizes he's been caught." Michael nodded. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." "But what if he lies?" I asked. "What if he tries to pretend this is a misunderstanding?" "We'll have the documents," Sarah said. "We'll have the video, we'll have the nurse's statement, and I have one more thing." She pulled out her phone. "I've been talking to some of the staff. One of them saw Dean leaving your office late at night before the accident. He was carrying a bag. There's a chance he took something from your office." "He took the hard drives," I said. "They're gone." "Exactly," Sarah said, "but the backup system still has everything. And if he tries to say you stole the money, we can show you were the one trying to uncover the theft." I felt something shift inside me. For days, I'd been a victim. Hurt, confused, powerless. But I wasn't powerless anymore. I had proof. I had people who believed me, and I had a plan. "What about the funeral?" I asked. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Sarah asked. "It's going to be public, a lot of people. I know. He'll try to turn it around. He'll make you look like the bad one. He can try. I looked at the calendar. The funeral was tomorrow. 24 hours until my brother stood in front of 80 people and said I was dead. 24 hours until I walked into that room and told him he was wrong. They weren't waiting for my body to be found. They were waiting for my name to be buried, and I was not going to let that happen. Sunday morning came faster than I was ready for. I woke up in that hotel room feeling like I hadn't slept at all. Sarah was already up, laying out a dark dress on the chair. Michael had everything prepared. The injunction was filed. The backup documents were secured. The video footage from the hospital was copied onto multiple devices. I stared at that dress. It was the same color I would have worn to my own funeral if I'd actually died. Black, mourning, but I wasn't mourning. I was preparing to fight. Sarah drove us to the church. We parked across the street, close enough to see the entrance. People were already arriving. I recognized faces I'd known for years. Employees, vendors, clients, family friends. They walked past the white flowers at the door and disappeared inside. Monica stood near the entrance in a black dress and dark sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. She accepted condolences with the practiced grace of a grieving sister-in-law. She patted hands. She nodded with tears in her eyes. She looked like a woman who'd lost someone she loved. And all of it was a lie. Dean was inside somewhere preparing his speech. I knew him. He'd start with kind words, emotional memories, and then he'd start the real performance. He'd talk about how troubled I'd been, how hard it was to watch me struggle, how he wanted to help me but I pushed everyone away. He'd plant those seeds so that when he finally mentioned the money, everyone would feel sorry for him. A man betrayed by his own sister. A brother forced to carry the burden of her mistakes. I need to go in, I said. Not yet, Michael said. Let him start speaking first. Let him say what he's going to say. What if he already told people I stole the money? Then we have more proof to counter it, he said. We let him make the first move. We let him bury himself in his own words. Sarah handed me a phone. Evan just sent me something, she said. He's been listening to his parents' conversations. Evan was Dean and Monica's son. He was 32 now, worked at Harper House since he was a teenager. He had no idea what his parents had done, or maybe he had some idea. Sarah showed me the message. Short. I'm sitting in the front row. I have something for you. Wait until I stand up. I didn't know what he had. I didn't know if I could trust him, but I had no choice. The church was nearly full. I could hear the soft murmur of voices through the open doors. Then the music changed. The pianist started playing something slow. The ceremony was beginning. Sarah leaned toward me. He's starting. I watched through the gap in the door. Dean walked to the podium. He was wearing a dark suit and a tie Monica probably picked out for him. He looked sad. A practiced sadness. The same face he'd worn every time he lied to me about the finances. My sister Rachel was a strong woman, he said. I closed my eyes. I'd already heard these words once before when I walked into the church 6 days after the accident. Now I was hearing them again, but this time I was ready. He talked about our childhood, our parents, Harper House, everything we built together. It was all true. Every word he said about the good times was true. That's what made it hurt so much. He knew exactly what to say. He knew which memories would make people cry. He knew how to make himself look like the loyal brother who loved his sister until the very end. Then the tone changed. Over the past few weeks, I discovered something I never expected. Something I wish I never had to share with any of you. People leaned forward. Dean looked down at his notes. Rachel was dealing with a lot, more than I realized, more than any of us realized. She made decisions she shouldn't have made, decisions that affected our family, decisions that affected everyone who works at Harper House. He's going to do it, Sarah whispered. He's going to blame you. I stepped closer to the door. I could see him clearly now. He was reading from a script, the same script he'd prepared weeks ago before the accident, before I almost died. A significant amount of money is missing from Harper House, Dean said. $640,000. I know it seems impossible. I know it seems unbelievable, but I've seen the evidence, and it tells me Rachel was responsible. People gasped. Someone said my name. Dean looked up. He looked like he'd just lost control of his emotions. I don't know why she did it, he said. I don't know what pressure she was under, but the records are clear. The money is gone, and my sister is no longer here to answer for it. That was my moment. I walked through the door. I walked down the center aisle. Everyone turned to look at me. A woman screamed. Monica dropped her program and stood up. Dean's face went pale. He couldn't speak. If you're going to tell them about my mistakes, I said, you should also tell them which ones you made in my name. The room exploded. People shouting. Someone pulled out a camera. Others started to get up, not sure what to do. Dean tried to say something. I don't understand, he stammered. You were dead. I was in a hospital, I said. You know I was in a hospital, Dean. You visited me there. You stood in my room and looked into my eyes. Then you told the nurse you'd never seen me before. Monica stepped forward. She's confused, she said to the room. She's been through something terrible. She doesn't know what she's saying. Don't touch me, I said, pulling my arm back. I'm not confused. I remember everything. The payments to M and E Event Solutions, the invoices you created with my signature, the money you stole for 18 months. Dean shook his head. This is insane. She's injured. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Then explain this, Sarah said. She stepped up beside me and pulled out copies of the invoices. 19 payments to a company registered to Monica Evans, Monica's maiden name. That's not true, Monica said. It's a coincidence. I checked the metadata, I said. Every single payment was approved from your home computer. Your IP address, Monica, not mine, yours. Michael Reed stepped forward. He introduced himself. He told the room he was representing me. He explained the bank had been notified. He explained the sale Dean had planned for Monday had been stopped. He explained all of Dean's access to company accounts was frozen until the investigation was complete. Dean looked around the room. He was losing control. She's lying, he said. This is all lies. Then why did you leave me in that hospital? I asked. Why did you tell the nurse you didn't know me? Dean didn't answer. He had nowhere to go. Then Evan stood up. I'd almost forgotten he was there. He was sitting in the front row, right near Monica. He pulled out his phone. I have something, he said. Something I recorded 2 days ago. Monica stared at him. Evan, no. I heard you talking, Evan said. In the study, you didn't know I was listening. You thought the door was closed. He pressed play. The room went silent. Monica's voice came through the speakers. After Sunday, Rachel becomes the thief and you become the grieving brother. A dead woman can't answer questions. Dean's voice answered. What if they find her? Then we say we believed what the police told us, Monica said, and we keep the story consistent. Dean was quiet for a moment, then he said, I already saw her. She could barely speak. The room erupted again. Dean was staring at his own son like he'd been betrayed by everyone. Monica was frozen. She couldn't think of a lie fast enough. You left me there, I said. You came to that hospital because you wanted to see if I was really alive. And when you saw that I was, you walked away. You planned a funeral for a woman you knew was living. You wanted the world to believe I was dead so nobody would ever ask about the money. Dean looked at me. He looked at the crowd. He looked at the faces of people who'd been his friends and partners for years, and then he said something that made everything clear. You weren't supposed to wake up. He didn't mean the car accident. He meant the hospital. He meant he hoped I'd stay unconscious or die or become someone who never remembered her own name. He meant he wanted me to disappear so he could take everything I built. Everyone heard it. Everyone recorded it. My brother had finally said the truth out loud. Dean didn't say another word. He walked away from the podium. Monica followed him. They left the church together, two people who'd tried to kill my reputation and failed. I watched them go. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. My family had tried to bury me, but I was still standing, and I was not going anywhere. The church was complete chaos after Dean and Monica left. People were shouting, crying, pulling out phones to record what had just happened. Employees came up to me with tears in their eyes, apologizing for believing Dean. They said they'd been confused. They said they were so relieved I was alive. I nodded and thanked them, but I didn't have a speech prepared. I didn't know what to tell them. Sarah and Michael guided me through the crowd, past the altar where my portrait still stood surrounded by white flowers. The black ribbon was still draped across the corner of the frame. I wanted to tear it down, to destroy it, to erase every trace of what my brother had done. But another part of me understood that picture wasn't a symbol of my death anymore. It was a symbol of what Dean tried to do to me. He tried to erase me. He tried to replace me with a story he could control, and he almost succeeded. The next few months were a blur of investigations and court dates. Dean and Monica's phones and computers were seized by the police. Their bank accounts were frozen. The financial records were audited by independent forensic accountants. Every single invoice matched what I had found. The signatures were forged. The payments were unauthorized. Dean had used my credentials to approve them. Monica had created the invoices using her home computer. Together, they had stolen more than $640,000 from the company we had built together. But here's the thing that made me angriest. The money wasn't hidden in some secret offshore account. It wasn't that sophisticated. They had spent it on credit card bills, luxury car leases, a vacation home they never told anyone about. They had used the money to pay for things they could have afforded if they had just been honest. They didn't need to steal. They were already wealthy. Dean was making $200,000 a year. Monica was making another $150,000. They had investments, retirement accounts, property. They had everything they could possibly want. But they wanted more. And when they couldn't get it honestly, they decided to take it from me. That was the part I couldn't wrap my head around. They had everything, and they still chose to destroy me. They still chose to steal from the company our father built. They still chose to leave me in that hospital bed to die. Dean was arrested on charges of fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Monica was charged with forgery, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. They both tried to blame each other. Dean said Monica pressured him into the scheme because she wanted a bigger house and a better lifestyle. Monica said Dean came up with the entire plan and she just went along with it because she was afraid of him. Neither of them took responsibility. Neither of them apologized to me. I didn't ask for an apology. I knew I wouldn't get one. Some people can't admit when they're wrong. My brother was one of those people. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I had to sit in that courtroom and listen to the details of their scheme laid out in front of strangers. I had to hear the forensic accountants explain how Monica had created false invoices, how Dean had used my electronic signature to approve them, how they had transferred money from Harper House accounts into M&E Event Solutions, and then how they had moved that money into their personal accounts. I had to hear the bank investigators testify about the trail of transactions that led back to Monica's home computer. And I had to sit there while my brother's lawyer tried to paint me as the villain. The lawyer argued that I had been negligent in managing the company finances. He said I should have noticed the payment sooner. He said that Dean and Monica only took the money because they were trying to save the business from my poor decisions. It was a desperate argument, and everyone in the courtroom could see through it. Evan testified against his parents. He sat in the witness box and told the court everything he had heard and seen. He said he hadn't known about the theft before the accident. He said he had started suspecting something was wrong when he found documents in his father's office. He said he recorded his parents because he didn't know what else to do. He was destroying his own family to save his own conscience, and he did it anyway. After the trial, Evan came to find me. We sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, not saying anything at first. Then he started crying. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have said something sooner. I should have asked questions." I didn't want to believe it. I looked at him for a long moment. He was my nephew. I had watched him grow up. I had taught him how to fold napkins for weddings. I had taught him how to handle difficult clients. I had given him his first job, his first promotion, his first management role. And in the end, he was the one who told the truth. "You did the right thing," I told him. "It took courage to do what you did. But I still didn't stop them," he said. "I knew something was wrong and I didn't do anything until it was almost too late." "That's true," I said, "but you did it anyway. That's what matters." I didn't forgive him immediately. I couldn't. The wounds were still too fresh, but I could see that he was trying. And that counted for something. Harper House survived. Michael worked with the bank to freeze the remaining assets. The auditors recovered about $400,000 of the stolen money, not all of it. Some of it had been spent and couldn't be recovered, but the business was stable. The employees stayed, the clients stayed, the weddings were still booked, the hotel rooms were still filled. The business went on, even though the family that owned it had been torn apart. I made changes. I hired a new financial director, someone independent who reported directly to me and had no connection to my brother or anyone else in the family. I gave ownership shares to some of the long-term employees who had stayed loyal to Harper House through everything. They deserved to have a stake in its future. I also stopped being the person who trusted everyone just because they were family. I stopped pretending that blood meant the same thing as loyalty. That was the hardest lesson. For 30 years, I believed in my brother. I trusted him with our money, our business, our future. I trusted him with my life. And he repaid me with lies and theft and a funeral I never should have attended. About a month after the trial, I found my funeral portrait in a storage room at Harper House. A worker had moved it there after the service. He didn't know what to do with it. He asked if I wanted to throw it away. I stared at that photo for a long time. It was a good picture. It had been taken years earlier at a company event. I was smiling. I was happy. I didn't know then that my brother was already stealing from me. I didn't know that he was already planning to destroy me, but I knew now. I took the black ribbon off the frame. I didn't tear the photo up. I didn't burn it. I didn't destroy it in anger. I kept it. I hung it in a quiet hallway near the conference room where I would see it every day. I wanted to remember what my family had done to me. But I also wanted to remember that I was still here, that I was stronger than they thought, that I survived. Dean and Monica tried to bury my voice, my reputation, and my name. They almost succeeded. They almost convinced everyone that I was a thief and a liar and a woman who drove herself off a cliff because she couldn't face her own sins. But they were wrong. I walked back into that room alive. I stood up for myself. I told the truth in front of everyone who mattered. Survival was only the beginning. The real victory was taking back my name and never allowing anyone to speak for me again. Dean and Monica both received prison sentences. Dean got 8 years for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Monica got 5 years for forgery and money laundering. They lost everything. The vacation home was seized. Their retirement accounts were frozen. Their reputation in the community was destroyed. People who had once respected them now looked at them with disgust. The family name, the one our father had worked so hard to build, was now associated with greed and betrayal. I didn't take any pleasure in their punishment. I didn't feel satisfied watching them led away in handcuffs. I just felt tired and sad and angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. But I also felt free. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to pretend that everything was okay. I didn't have to smile and nod while Dean made decisions that hurt our business. I didn't have to cover for Monica's mistakes. I didn't have to protect people who didn't deserve it. My family held a funeral because they thought silence was the same as death. They were wrong. I walked back into that room alive, but survival was only the beginning. The real victory was taking back my name and never allowing anyone to speak for me again. What would you have done if your own family tried to bury the truth with you? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe for more stories from Family Secret Stories.